Well, if nothing else, it made getting up at 5 a.m. absolutely worth it. Grüezi miteinander, and welcome back to the Swiss Football Podcast, another World Cup special for you today as we continue to follow the exploits of the Swiss Nati men's football team as they go through World Cup 2026 in North America. It's a fantastic win to talk about today, 2-0 versus Algeria. A little bit different today. We're not going to spend too long on the first half, second half. I'm going to talk about the match overall, try and save a little bit of time and talk about the kind of context of the next couple of games going forward, as well as the feeling kind of going into the game. Because when we recorded the last pod, we didn't know if we were going to be facing Algeria, Ghana. There was a couple of different options it could have been. And Algeria were actually one of the teams that I was probably the most scared of in that group. So we're going to talk about my thoughts kind of going into the game, the match as a whole rather than two halves, and then obviously the context of this and what comes next, which we know now is Colombia. So let's get into it. So as well as being the first knockout round of this World Cup, yet another knockout round that the Swiss national team have made, there was quite a few interesting things going into this game even before the ball was kicked that I feel like we can talk about. And we'll start with Granit Xhaka. We'll start with him making his 150th appearance for the Swiss national team, which is just an incredible achievement, not only in the modern game, but kind of in the history of international football. To play that many times for one's country it is an incredible feat. To manage yourself and to keep yourself at the highest level for such a long time is so impressive, and massive congrats to Granit Xhaka. The only player that even comes close is Ricardo Rodriguez with 142. So we'll see if he, obviously I imagine he'll pass that mark over the next couple of years, because he's still very much capable and I think still very much Switzerland's best option at left back. But who will last the longest? Who will keep going the longest? I think it'll be an interesting battle between the two of them. I looked into Xhaka's past, his history with the Swiss national team. He actually made his debut against England, funnily enough, in a 2-2 draw back in 2011, qualifying for Euro 2012. Switzerland were 2 up in that game before England came back in the second half. Lampard got one, and I can't remember who got the other one. It might have even been an own goal that got England back in there in what I think was maybe Fabio Capello's kind of last throws of the dice as England manager. Now, Switzerland didn't qualify for that tournament in 2012. In fact, it's the only tournament since then that Switzerland have not qualified for with Xhaka in the team. And I think it stands to reason that Granit Xhaka becoming such an integral part of the Swiss national team is a huge part of why Switzerland have become such a different beast over the 15 years that he's been playing for the team now. They're almost no longer a question mark over their qualification. If Switzerland didn't qualify for a tournament now, there would be serious questions asked about why not. And Xhaka is a big part of that. Not just obviously the professionalism he brings in someone who can play 150 games for his nation, but also his obvious mentality, his aggressiveness, which I imagine bleeds into the dressing room as well. That refusal to accept being the underdog, if you know what I mean. That just because you aren't the biggest and strongest team doesn't mean that you're not going to go out there and absolutely fight everything you've got for the shirt. Obviously, alongside Xhaka, you have players like Rodriguez coming through, you have Shaqiri, and then you later on in time have the likes of Vargas and Doy, Zakaria, Sau, these very, very talented players, Sommer and Akanji and Kobel as well, who have all come through and added to this. But I think without the drive that a player like Xhaka gives a team, it doesn't matter who you have in there if the mentality isn't right. And that's why he is the captain. It's why he is the kind of talisman of this team so often. Maybe not in terms of goals scored. I think he's only got about 18, but more in terms of what he delivers both on and off the pitch for the team. Another big part of that, however, and again, congratulations to Granit for an absolutely incredible achievement, and here's to hopefully many, many more games. Another big part of that development of the Swiss team, the evolution of the Swiss team, was actually sat in the other dugout in the Algeria game, and that's Vladimir Petkovic, who is now the Algeria head coach. He was Switzerland's coach from 2014 to 2021. So when I started watching the Swiss national team properly, Petkovic was already well in charge and had done great things with the team. To take over in 2014, after not qualifying for 2012, and I obviously think he takes over after the World Cup in 2014 in Rio, which Switzerland were kind of fine in, but nothing incredible. Obviously, still at this point hadn't won a knockout game in a World Cup or in a World Cup since 88 years or something ridiculous like that when they beat Germany, something along those lines. It's a crazy stat. But under Petkovic, Switzerland become that, I don't want to say guaranteed qualifier, but you know what I mean. They're a team that you're not surprised by when they qualify. You expect them to qualify from just about any group, whether it's through a playoff, whether it's by leading the group, but you expect Switzerland to be there. And Petkovic brought that sense of stability, I think, by using players like Xhaka well and by utilising a very, very good generation of players. He really kind of built that confidence and that stability in Switzerland that they were not to be underestimated. I mean, you think about the victory against France in, 2021? The comeback and winning on penalties, maybe the greatest moment in Swiss football history. That's Petkovic, that fight and that desire. And I think that part of my thinking going into this was that Petkovic being in the dugout offered maybe a little bit too much of a perfect situation for Algeria to win the game. Switzerland's ex-coach coming back and beating them and kind of taking his new team forward. There was always that worry that the narrative of football is going to work against you in that sense. So it was great to see him. Also great to see the back of him, because I'm really pleased that Switzerland managed to overcome that hurdle, because it did offer a slightly difficult match, which, to be honest, I think the idea of Algeria did anyway. They were a very, very good side with a lot of very, very good players. So I never felt particularly comfortable going into this game because of Petkovic being there, because of the team that Algeria have. I always thought that this was going to be a potential banana skin for Switzerland, and one that they really, really needed to be switched on for. And if you watched my episode on the Canada game, you'll know that I wasn't exactly enthused with the way that Switzerland ended that group stage. So it was going to take a bit of a turnaround to come into this game with the right kind of mentality. Then we take a look at the lineup, and two things stood out to me. One was the right back situation. Yet again, Yakin changes things. He brings in Zakaria, or brings back Zakaria, I should say, from the first game, bringing him back to a more of a kind of standard right back role. I think he, at the start of the game against Qatar, was playing more of a three in the back with Zakaria on the right hand side, which then kind of evolved out into a purely kind of right back fit. This time he goes with the flat back four straight from the start, with Zakaria coming back to replace Aquez this time, who had replaced Vidma, who had replaced Zakaria. So again, another change at right back. Don't know why. Again, we spoke about this last time. Maybe he feels that this is the best option for the game, or maybe he's still trying to find who is going to fit best in that position. But Zakaria goes on to have a really, really good game. So it's definitely not a problematic position. He's a big part, I think, of why Switzerland win this game. And I imagine he'll be there in the next game, but who knows what Yakin's going to do there at this point. Might be someone that we haven't seen there, or maybe Michi Ebischer goes back there or something like that. But that was just a point that I noticed, was that the right back changed again. The really big one for me, and the one that I was really pleased to see, was the 4-2-3-1, which again, if you watched the Canada recap, I suggested that maybe this was the best way that Switzerland could play, with that midfield pivot in the middle of Xhaka and Freuler, who I expected to be starting, Manzambi in front of them in the 10, and Vargas and Ndoye either side on the left and right. That's the way that I felt Switzerland should have approached Canada. I think we can talk about this when we talk about the game itself, but we spoke about the idea of Manzambi being free to play more advanced in a central position, not as a kind of faux right winger where he's kind of on the right wing, but he's coming inside and whoever's playing right back has to really kind of run the whole channel. Having Manzambi in that clear position in the middle paid its dividends in this game, and I think it's the way that Switzerland need to look at him moving forward if they want to get the best out of him, and I think that massively showed in the game itself. Start of the game is probably as you'd imagine. It's kind of feeling each other out. It's two teams who aren't quite sure what version of the other team they're going to be getting. Both of them are quite flexible tactically. They've got two coaches who will change things around. We know that from Petkovic in the past with Switzerland, that he has played in multiple different ways. For example, I thought watching it first that Algeria were playing three at the back, which is what Petkovic tended to play with Switzerland and what Yakin adopted when he first took over the Swiss team in a tournament. But it became clear then that actually it was a flat back four with Bentaleb from the midfield dropping back into a centre-back position when Algeria were in possession, allowing their fullbacks to push forward. So kind of looked like a three at the back, it was actually four at the back, but you can see that kind of fluidity, that ability to rotate, which Yakin also brings in the Swiss side as well. So a really, really interesting kind of potential tactical bout going on here between these two sides. And at the start, it's very much kind of, dug in, kind of trench warfare. Nobody's really going anywhere. And then on 10 minutes, ball gets to Manzambi and he just drives forward, which is exactly what you want to see from him, exactly what you know he can do. And as we said before, him playing in that central position just gives him the ability to have a bit more clarity with his role. He takes the ball in the midfield, drives forward, gets to the byline, cuts it back, Embolo's there. Exactly the kind of thing that Embolo wants from the players around him. He's very, very good at bringing players into the game as that number 9, as that focal point. In return, he needs players creating those kind of opportunities for him, and Manzambi is exactly the kind of player that will put those opportunities on the plate for him. There's no way you can miss that chance, and that's exactly what Embolo's good at, getting into those positions and putting them away, and all of a sudden the game completely shifts. Switzerland are 1-0 up, and what we then see is it's a fantastic performance from Switzerland, not in its kind of aggression, positivity, fluidity, creativity. It's not that kind of game. It's not the second half against Bosnia. It's not parts of what we saw against Qatar and Canada that weren't quite finished off. It is kind of what I suggested that Switzerland might try to do against Canada as a bit of a warm-up for those knockout stages, in just complete containment of a team who have a little bit more of the ball. They do, they never dominate the game, but they have more of the ball than Switzerland do, but they can't use it, because what Switzerland create are situations in which it's just so difficult to fashion meaningful chances. And we'll look at the stats later and talk about what all of that kind of added up to. But the first half is a great microcosm of this, in that Switzerland get that goal, they're clinical, they take that chance. They could have had two. We have, I think it's Manzambi again creating issues down that kind of left-hand side channel of the box, and it's Zakaria that ends up with, who just can't finish when maybe he should have done better. But again, it's Dennis Zakaria in that position, maybe not the person you want to be in that position, but he's in there from that right back, pushing way up, which he did against Qatar as well, which almost gives Switzerland the perfect first half, where they go in 2-0 up at half-time. Algeria pop back into the game here and there, but it's a little bit like that Qatar game in match day 1, where there's some half chances, but it never feels like Algeria are really going to put the ball in the back of the net. And if they do get into those positions, Akanji, Elvedi, Kobel, they all kind of handle it pretty comfortably. No one ever looks like they're in a kind of stressful position. And what was fantastic, especially in response to that Canada game, because one of the big things I complained about was just how emotional so many of the Swiss players seemed to be in that Canada game for some reason. Maybe it is that kind of high-intensity, high-press style that Canada play with, which Algeria just really don't. They want to control the ball a little bit more. They're a little bit more, they have a bit more nous, a bit more kind of tactical know-how, a bit more technical ability than the Canadians. So they don't feel the need to have that kind of high intensity, high sprinting approach. But for whatever reason, the Swiss are so cool, calm and collected in that first half that, you almost feel the ability to relax a little bit, despite the fact that it's a knockout game, despite the fact that it's high pressure, that it's high intensity. It just doesn't feel that way. And that really carries on into the second half. Massively helped, of course, by that early goal. Now, we had an early goal against Canada in the second half, an early goal here. If this is the way that Yakin wants to start the second half, I'm all for it. You go out, you try and fashion a chance within the first couple of minutes of the second half. The other team maybe isn't quite up to scratch just yet. They're maybe still getting their heads on from the halftime team talk. You're ready to go. And we see that in, you create the chance, it doesn't work, it's a bad clearance, and Doy picks it up and just lashes it at goal. No thinking about it, no overdoing it, no second guessing. Just get it at the bottom corner and it goes in. And all of a sudden, there's the game, and it feels almost cocky or overconfident to say that it's the game. But looking back at the highlights of the game, watching more extended stuff back, you can just see that from that point onwards, there's barely anything from Algeria. There's barely any kind of real ability to break down what Switzerland are putting in front of them. Even then, later in the game, Switzerland are still applying pressure. They're still using the ball really, really well. They're not just booting the ball down the field. They're not just getting it out and parking the bus. they're still playing their game. It's containment. It's smooth. It's great in possession. It's great in transition. It's sensible. It's clever. It's calm. It's a brilliant, brilliant performance. You even have time for Fabian Rieder to miss one of the clearest cut chances you're ever going to get in a World Cup to score a goal. I don't think I'll be able to recreate the noise I made on him missing that chance. Just him putting the ball back across the goal towards the goalkeeper. It felt like something you do in a dream, where you have the opportunity to put the ball in the net and your feet just won't work. No matter what you want them to do, it's only ever going that way. And I very, very much hope that he doesn't now relive that moment for the rest of his career, because I know I would. But it's okay, Fabian. The game was won. It's all good. We went through. You don't have to worry about it too much. But my word, was that ever bad? I mean, the fact that I've seen probably more people talking about that miss than the actual win itself kind of says something. But yeah, tough luck. Very, very tough luck. That's never nice to be involved in. But ultimately, it didn't matter. But yeah. But look, overall, it's just an excellent performance. I mean, I've on multiple occasions when I've talked about the national team, the men in that sense, I always point to the Italy game in 2024 in the Euros, where Switzerland beat Italy 2-0. Now, this is Italy, the defending European champions. Yes, they've had their issues with international tournaments since that time, but this is still a strong Italy team that Switzerland are going against. That 2-0 win is the best performance I've ever seen from Switzerland since I've been watching them properly. This is in the same ballpark. It's not the same kind of game. It's not the same kind of gravitas. But in terms of the sheer professionalism of the performance and the comfort that you felt as a fan watching it, and I'm a, naturally pessimistic fan. I'm a very, very stressed individual when watching football at the best of times. But when it's a game I genuinely care about and there's something on the line, I can be even worse. I don't think at any point after Switzerland went 2-0 up was I ever convinced that anything other than a Switzerland win was coming. And I think that deserves massive credit, because Algeria are a good team. They were the team that I probably didn't want out of the options that were awaiting Switzerland, with Petkovic in charge, with the players that they have. So to put in that level of performance in what could have been an extremely stressful, difficult, dangerous game, I think every single player on the pitch deserves massive credit. You go look at the ratings, you go look at the algorithm scores, it's all in the green. Every single player stepped up and had a great game, but you watch it with the eye and you watch the game being played and you can see those players putting in those performances. I mean, look, the stats are there. I can read a few of them here. Less of the ball overall, but defensively brilliant. You win more duels, aerial and ground. 70% of tackles won versus Algeria's 43%. No errors. You limit Algeria's ability to create meaningful chances. They have 2 big chances, but their XG is well under 1 for the game. Whereas Switzerland, I think, is it's 2.45 or something like that. Half of that is probably Fabian Rieder's chance, which he missed. But still, you have less of the ball, but you're creating the more meaningful chances. And in direct contrast to the group stages, you're putting them away. Now, for me, a massive part of that is that midfield switch. Is Yakin going to that 4-2-3-1? It means that front four of Embolo, Vargas, Ndoye, and Manzambi is genuinely dangerous, because you have the defensive solidity behind them where they don't need to worry too much about what's going on behind them, that they can focus purely on being an extremely potent attacking quartet. I've mentioned multiple times that I don't like the midfield 3 that Yakin's been playing, because I feel that you all have 3 players who all do the same thing. Having Manzambi there means you have that complete wild card who can completely change a game by himself. But you also have Ndoye and Vargas either side of him, who we've seen in every single game so far this season, have been very, very industrious with the ball at their feet, very, very dangerous for the fullbacks. And Embolo can score goals if they're put in for him, but he can also bring in all of the other 3 players around him to massively affect the game and create those chances for them. As well as that, having Zakaria at right back, again against Qatar, we saw it, and we saw it here today. He pushes right up. He's very, very willing to get way up on the right-hand side. But you have cover with Freuler and Xhaka, who can drop back in and create more kind of defensive numbers when you need them. And he will work back as well. And so will Vargas on the other side. And Ndoye is very comfortable coming back and covering from him. What it allows Dan Ndoye to do is to go inside to create the kind of chances that lead to him scoring that second goal, where all of a sudden he finds himself in the box, which he did a lot against Qatar as well, because Zakaria was pushing up so much. Allowing Ndoye to come inside as well means you're effectively having kind of almost three central attackers in Manzambi, Embolo, and Ndoye, who are all very capable with the ball at their feet, all very capable of putting the ball in the net, and all very intelligent in high-pressure situations. You know, I can't sing the praises of Johan Manzambi enough. Every single game, you know, that we've spoken about, I've mentioned him. He came on against Qatar and looked really, really good. Bosnia changes the game. Canada changes the game. And here directs the game from the 10th minute onwards. And, you know, you talk about players announcing themselves on the world stage. I think this is his tournament. You know, you look back at James Rodriguez with Colombia. I don't really feel that comparing Manzambi to that at the same time is wrong. He is lighting this up. Everybody's talking about him. All of a sudden, I mean, Freiburg fans probably won't like me talking like this, but I can imagine Freiburg's directors are probably loving it, because the money must just be stacking up in terms of what his value is going up to now that they can demand from other teams. And you can imagine the kind of teams now that are looking at him and thinking, 20 years old, and he's doing this in a World Cup every single game. That's the kind of guy you're going to drop serious money on. Because it's all well and good doing it every now and again in Germany, doing it in the Europa League. Sure, other players have done that and haven't quite hit the heights, but when you can do it on an international stage like this, it's just amazing. It's seriously, seriously mind-blowing how good he's been this tournament. And here's just hoping he continues to be that. You know, and if he only becomes the focus for the other team, that they focus more on him and allow those people around him to do what they need to do as well, that's fine too. You know, let's talk about that next game, because that kind of leads me on to that quite nicely, which is Colombia. Now, when I recorded the previous pod after Canada, we didn't know who we were going to play. We do now. Colombia come through 1-0 against Ghana. Doesn't feel super impressive given Ghana's general ranking, where they sit in the grand scheme of football. But anyone who watched Ghana in the group stages, watched their game against England, for example, knows that this is a team that can defend. They are backs to the wall. They will throw themselves in front of the ball, put their bodies on the line constantly to get through the game. Colombia had a lot of the ball, a lot of opportunities, only came out 1-0 winners. You can read what you want into that. Ghana are very solid defensively. Colombia may have missed more opportunities than I saw in the highlights that I watched. You know, it's a little bit too early in the morning for me to be getting up again at 3 a.m. next time to watch that one too. But I think that Colombia are potentially quite comparable to Algeria. I think they play differently. They are a little bit more vibrant, let's say, with the ball. They clearly dominate possession a little bit more. I think Switzerland can deal with that. I think that this performance against Algeria, allowing them to have a little bit more of the ball, but limiting the quality of their opportunities, and then utilizing the opportunities that that front four can create for you with Ndoye, Manzambi, Vargas, and Embolo. And also the backup options in terms of bringing on Noah Okafor, which we saw Zeki Amdouni coming on as well, who we all know is a great player on his day. You do worry about his sharpness, but there's Cedric Itten there too. There's Christian Fastnacht on the bench as well, who can do it too. There are options for the Swiss to use in that sense. But I think that if Switzerland can channel this kind of performance into what we see against Colombia, I don't see any reason why Switzerland can't make that elusive quarterfinal of a World Cup. And if they can do that, the sky's the limit. It's one game at a time. This is the beauty of tournament football. If you can get it right on the day, if you can ride your luck, and the gods smile upon you and the narrative works for you, anything can happen. That's all I'll say on that. We'll leave it there. Paddy.